Good morning. The committee will come to order. Earlier this month, I, along with Ranking Member Velasquez and several members of Congress, including many on this committee, introduced a resolution to establish the third Tuesday in November as National Entrepreneurs Day. As today, November 17th, is the third Tuesday of this month, it seems only fitting that we hold a hearing to highlight the vital role that entrepreneurs play in the American economy and how being an entrepreneur is, for many, a large part of the American dream. We are a country that was founded by inventors and entrepreneurs such as Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Jefferson and even George Washington. Our nation's rich heritage of entrepreneurship should compel us to continue to create opportunities for individuals to dream big and strike out on their own. In America, entrepreneurship is a viable career path, one that a majority of Americans consider a measure of success. We lead the world in ingenuity and innovation, and we should be proud of that. As the Committee on Small Business, we recognize that entrepreneurs are in every community, whether it's running a 100-year-old family restaurant or creating the next big product at a local accelerator. Each and every day, entrepreneurs are seeking to provide for their families and build their communities and live the American dream. However, sadly, we do know that the rate of new business creation is less than it was a few decades back. And while everyday people still dream of starting their own small business, it's become harder given the increase in regulations, challenges accessing capital, and general uncertainty in our economic climate. Today, though, we are fortunate to be joined by a great group of witnesses who have been successful striking out as entrepreneurs and who continue to promote entrepreneurship in their communities. I want to thank our panel for taking time away from their jobs and making the trip to Washington for this important hearing. And we look very forward to your testimony here this morning. And I'll now yield to the Ranking Member, Ms. Velasquez, for her opening remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Entrepreneurs are one of the leading forces in our economy. They develop new products, stimulate other industries, and create new markets. As a result, startups have a disproportionately positive impact on job creation. By starting new endeavors and developing cutting-edge products, entire industries, as well as the overall economy, are renewed and energized. Forming a new business and bringing innovative products and services to unproven markets is inherently risky. As a result, startups face unique challenges. From accessing capital and maneuvering an uncertain tax code to managing operations and human resources, there are numerous hurdles to launching a new venture. Yet, despite the risks and challenges, new companies continue springing up, reinvigorating and strengthening our economy. It is this committee's responsibility to ensure these firms have the resources they need to navigate these many complexities and take advantage of the wide-ranging support available to them. Fostering innovators who are determined to turn their dreams into reality benefits the entire economy, since these businesses create new markets and increase competition. Their actions have a multiplier effect on job creation, as new enterprises and innovators are drawn into the new market. During today's hearing, we will have an opportunity to examine the unique role entrepreneurs and startups have played in strengthening our economy. Currently, entrepreneurship is experiencing growth as more immigrants, entrepreneurs, and older professionals start businesses. And these job creators are becoming increasingly diverse, with more than 40% of new entrepreneurs being minorities. While these numbers are promising, we have seen some groups steadily lose ground. In fact, the rate of women entrepreneurs has fallen to 36.8%, which is close to a two-decade low. And despite more college graduates starting businesses, the rate of younger entrepreneurs has been declining due to greater student debt burdens. Today's hearings will allow us to find solutions to these issues so we can learn how best to increase their participation as entrepreneurs. In order to facilitate their success, it is critical that as dynamics change, the strategy for supporting them also evolve. In advance to your testimony, I just want to take an opportunity to thank all of you for being here today. And I yield back. Thank you.
I thank the gentlelady for her opening remarks, and I'd also like to ask unanimous consent that the gentleman from California, Mr. Peters, is recognized for the purpose of this hearing to ask questions and participate like any other member. He was the, I believe, the lead sponsor in the last Congress of this legislation, and is a co-sponsor this time as well. So we thank him. Without objection, so ordered. I'd now like to introduce our distinguished panel here this morning. I'm very pleased to introduce our first witness, one of my constituents, Chris Dosich, who is the co-founder and vice president of marketing Listener in Cincinnati. Listener is new audio technology, and it recently raised $10 million in financing, which will lead to new jobs and opportunities in the Cincinnati area. But more importantly, Mr. Ostich himself is a successful entrepreneur, and he has done a lot to reignite the spirit of entrepreneurship back in my hometown, and I thank you for that, even though the Bengals lost last night for the first time this year. Very depressing today, so if I'm a little less, well, never mind. It was just a sad, sad evening. So anyway, thank you very much for being here, and I would like to now turn to my colleague, Mr. Curbelo, to introduce our second witness.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I thank you and the ranking member for giving us this wonderful opportunity. I'm pleased to introduce our next witness, who hails from my home state of Florida. Mr. Sam Zites is the CEO and founder of TouchSuite, located in Boca Raton, Florida. Mr. Zites started his company, which specializes in point-of-sale technology, in 2003, and today employs about 60 people. He was recently recognized by Ernst & Young as the Southeast Region's 2015 Entrepreneur of the Year. In addition to his everyday job, Mr. Zites is passionate about creating opportunities for America's youth to engage in entrepreneurship as a viable career path, and he is active in his local chapter of the Young Presidents Organization. He's joined here today by his wife, Sheila, and they are the parents of Rachel, Jordan, and Morgan. Rachel, an entrepreneur in her own right, Mr. Zites has called his clone. And Jordan has also started a successful business. We'll see what the future holds for Morgan, but I think we all have a pretty good idea as to what's going to happen. So thank you very much, Mr. Zites, for joining us today. And Mr. Chairman, I yield back. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I'd like to next introduce our next witness. Our third witness will be Drew Burkowitz, who is the CEO and founder of Letters, which is incorporated in Connecticut, but has much of its team located in Brooklyn, New York. As a resourceful entrepreneur, Mr. Burkowitz previously founded Cloud Insure and Cyber Factors. He's also a West Point graduate and proudly served in the United States Army. We thank you for your service and also for making the trip to be with us here today. And finally, I'd like to yield to another gentleman who we also thank for his service, Mr. Moulton, to introduce our next witness.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It is my pleasure to introduce my constituent from Newburyport, Massachusetts, Miss Jennifer Pepper. Jen is the owner of 2 Etsy-based stores, Pepper Sprouts, opened in 2008, which sells woodland-inspired home decor, and Chatty Press, launched in 2011, which sells custom stationery. In 2012, Miss Pepper left her job as a designer of the catalog Fetch Dog to be a full-time entrepreneur, operating her creative businesses. She owns and operates her online stores and works with other small businesses throughout the country to bring her nature-inspired home goods to life. Welcome, Ms. Pepper.
Thank you very much, and I also would note that the gentleman from Massachusetts did an excellent job this morning on, I think it was Morning Joe or one of those talk shows, so did a nice job.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Glad to hear you're watching MSNBC.
Absolutely. It's a rare thing. I had a feeling I might get something like that back, but I have a very open mind. Once in a while, I'll leave it there. Okay. Without further ado, we'll go to our witnesses for their testimony. And I also want to just make sure you know what our rules are. We have basically the 5-minute rule, which means that you get 5 minutes to tell us everything you'd like to tell us, and then we get 5 minutes to ask questions, and we go back and forth to make it fair. And there's a lighting system. The green light will be on for 4 minutes. The yellow light will come on to let you know you got 1 minute to wrap up, and then the red light will come on, and we'd ask you to try to keep within that as much as possible. We'll give you a little leeway, but not a whole lot. So, Mr. Dosich, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
That would help. Does my time start over?
Well, yeah, we'll restart the clock there. Okay.
All right.
Restart it.
Thank you for restarting my clock. I'm about 5 minutes, 8 seconds. So So as I said, I'm Chris Dosich. I'm an entrepreneur. This is my third entrepreneurial tour of duty, if you will, as co-founder and marketing leader at Listener, which is a connected devices company based in Cincinnati, Ohio. I'd like to thank Chairman Shabbat and the rest of the Small Business Committee for having me here today. This is a real honor to be here in D.C. So I started my first company in 2006, and I started that company because of a pain that I felt personally. That the pain was being new to a job and a city that I didn't know. So I was new, I was disconnected, I did not have professional or social networks that mattered, and I don't mean the digital kind. I wanted to have a life that was full of meaningful relationships, both at home and at work. So I did what most rational people would do. I took all of the money that I had to my name, moved into my parents' basement. At 28 years old, I took a job waiting tables at night, and I went to work building this company. What I found very, very quickly was this. Your money goes quickly. Second, in any successful startup or entrepreneurial ecosystem, you always have three things. Entrepreneurs with scalable ideas, investors willing to back those ideas, and customers willing to engage and buy those products. Cincinnati, at this time in 2006, was a little short on all three. It was clearly not the first place on earth that one would think to build a tech company. We didn't have accelerators. We didn't have incubators. We had very little venture capital available to companies like mine. What I didn't know, however, was that there was something very special in the works that was set in motion years before. There were things already happening that would very quickly make Cincinnati and the rest of Ohio what we call flyover country no more. In 2002, the Ohio Third Frontier was established to change the trajectory of Ohio's economy. The $2.1 billion initiative provides funding to Ohio technology-based companies, universities, research institutions, and other organizations to create new stuff, new technology-based products, companies, and jobs. It also set up regional investment arms in cities all over Ohio, including Cincinnati, Columbus, and Cleveland. By 2006, the Ohio Third Frontier was starting to actually reach into these communities. And our regional investment arm in Cincinnati of the Third Frontier itself was called Cincy Tech. And they were just about to start making their first investments. So definitely right time, right place for me. My first company, Black Book HR, was funded in 2008 by Cincy Tech and a syndicate of angel investors. By 2013, Black Book HR was one of the industry's leading software solutions for employee engagement. In 2013, I started my next business with friend and P&G marketing veteran Rodney Williams called Listener. So Listener is a new communication protocol, unlike Bluetooth. However, we're simply using sound around us to connect devices. In 3 short years, we've grown Listener to more than 40 employees. We'll reach 80 by the end of 2016. Just last week, as Chairman mentioned, we announced our $10 million Series B financing that was led by one of the most successful corporate venture capitalists in the world, Intel Capital, the chip makers, as you probably know. Cincy Tech, however, has participated in each company that I've led and almost every round of capital that we've raised. Collectively, companies that I've started have raised more than $20 million of venture capital money. And in total, we employ more than 60 people in all of those companies at an average salary of approximately $70,000, something I'm very proud of. And I'm just one representative from this great community. There are hundreds more like me in Cincinnati and in other cities in Ohio right now. In fact, many people are saying the Midwest offers the best opportunity for growing companies outside of Silicon Valley. And the math behind their logic is fairly straightforward. The Midwest makes up 19% of the country's GDP. We generate almost 20% of its patents. We have some of the best engineering schools in the world, and we house and hold more than any other region in the country in terms of the concentration of Fortune 500 companies. Yet, the region only attracts 5% of the nation's venture capital. So that's where state and federal government come in. As I mentioned previously, there are three things that are a part of any successful startup ecosystem: entrepreneurs with scalable ideas, investors willing to invest in them, and companies willing to do business with those companies. We still do not have enough access to capital in Southwest Ohio, and we would not survive without programs like the Third Frontier. Today, the world has changed in Cincinnati and in Ohio, and here are three examples of the Third Frontier's influence. First, Cincy Tech has invested more than $25 million in 59 companies in Cincinnati. Those companies have generated more than $500 million of follow-on capital, and more than 760 jobs have been created. The Brandery has graduated 56 companies that have generated $120 million in follow-on funding. And lastly, Centrifuge is a network connecting the region's high-potential startups with talent, funding, and customers.
Mr. Dosich, if you wouldn't mind concluding, and
Certainly.
thank you.
This is the end. We would not be here if I didn't have access to initiatives like the Third Frontier. We've come a long way in less than a decade, and there's still plenty of work to do. But I'll tell you today that Ohio is flyover country no more. Thanks again for having me here today. It's been an honor.
Thank you very much. Mr. Zites, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
I'm happy to be speaking before you today on National Entrepreneur Day. Entrepreneurship is what built this country through the likes of Rockefeller, Carnegie, Edison, Ford, and many others. And entrepreneurship remains the only competitive advantage we have over the rest of the world. I'm extremely passionate about entrepreneurism, and actually just came back 2 days ago from the EY Strategic Growth Forum, where I was fortunate enough to be recognized as one of the Entrepreneurs of the Year. I've also had my companies appear on the Inc. 500 list of fastest growing companies 7 times. My company, TouchSuite, is a financial technology company focused on the payment processing space. We provide businesses throughout North America with the technology necessary to accept payment. I believe that every great company needs to have a purpose greater than themselves and profit. At TouchSuite, our purpose is to help rebuild America, one small business at a time. Through the products we create, we help other small business owners to compete with larger companies by giving them the same access to data, marketing, and capital that Fortune 500 and big box retailers have long enjoyed. As a result, they're able to increase their businesses, expand, provide for additional jobs, and stimulate the economy. However, I'm most proud of the amazing entrepreneurs that my wife Sheila and I are raising. My oldest daughter Rachel is a passionate lacrosse player and saw a need for improved practice equipment and started her own company, Gladiator Lacrosse, when she was just 13 years old. She participated in the local chapter of YAY, the Young Entrepreneur Academy, which is a 33-week program for students after school where they learn how to start a business, write a business plan, receive mentorship, and ultimately pitch investors for funding. She is now 15 and generating over $1 million in revenue. It's the top seller on Amazon, has created multiple jobs, and was recently recognized by Governor Scott with Florida's Young Entrepreneur Award. My son Jordan also participated in the YAY program last year and won the local competition, the regional competition, and finished 3rd in the nation out of approximately 4,000 students. I grew up in a blue-collar neighborhood outside Detroit, and even though I didn't have much, I recognized there was opportunity for everyone, regardless of the position you started in life. Unlike so many other countries, I always wanted to be an entrepreneur, but I figured you needed one of 2 things, money or know-how. I didn't have any money, so I figured I better go get some know-how and went to law school. In 2001, with 2 young children, I took a leap of faith and followed my dream of starting my own business. I made it against the odds because of my legal background and the people I met along the way. If you want to make a decision at the governmental level that will increase the odds for others, then I would suggest you take the following 4 actions. First, make the capital markets available to everyone, not just large corporations. If small business had access to capital, there are a million ways they could effectively deploy it to obtain amazing returns for their business. Empower banks, particularly community banks, to make loans. Banks, by their very nature, are not entrepreneurial, and they want to avoid as much risk as possible. However, if the government were to insure part of the loan by charging a premium, they could go a long way towards offsetting the increased losses that would have to be paid out. Not only would this drive additional revenue through the premiums, but by deploying capital into small businesses will create additional jobs, taxes, and capital expenditures. Second, reduce regulation. The cost of compliance is too high. There are many valid instances where regulation is necessary. However, we need to be able to remove as many obstacles as we can for businesses to be successful. Across the board, private enterprise has always been more efficient than government in execution. Less involvement in government and small business affairs equals stronger small businesses, which equal more jobs. Third, create a favorable tax environment so people will want to invest. Like any good business person, they will run a risk-reward analysis, any potential investment that takes into account their after-tax return. The return needs to be high enough, or they will sit on the sidelines and not deploy their capital. Finally, promote entrepreneurship in the next generation. Entrepreneurship is as important as any core curriculum and needs to be taught to our children. We need to empower the future generation with the tools to succeed. Technology is rapidly changing at unprecedented levels, and that will only continue to speed up. We cannot train them for the jobs of the future, since we don't know they will be or the skills that will be required. However, we can prepare them for the mindset necessary to be successful. Our government needs to continue to support what built this country and foster an environment that is pro-entrepreneurship. It is my belief that through the planting of the seeds necessary to foster entrepreneurship in this country, we can harvest everything we need to regain our greatness. A strong culture of entrepreneurship in this country will solve most of our problems, will create jobs, will help the GDP rise and shrink the deficit, much in the same way that we rely on the brave men and women of the armed forces to fight for us and protect us. We need to remove the restraints we have placed on our small business community and allow them to win the global economic war we're fighting.
Thank you very much. Mr. Burkowitz, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Chairman. Members, for inviting me today. I'm a former 82nd Airborne paratrooper, so when I see a red light, if there's a compulsion to jump off the desk, you'll know why. It comes as really a fascinating story for me to even be in front of you today. About 2.5 years ago, with 3 teenage children, my wife from Madrid, Spain, I began to lament that, in fact, there were no lasting words coming out of their device of choice. Their device of choice, whether we like it or not, is not the writing desk, it's not parchment paper, it's not quill pens. Their writing desk is right in their hand. And I'd spent 20 years in the software industry since I left the military in the mid-90s, had graduated from the Yale School of Management. And in fact, in the summer of 1994, I had a life event that put me on the path to start my company. And that path was I met a beautiful Spanish woman from Madrid, Spain, and for the next 6 months of our lives, we conducted long-form letter writing, which became the foundation of our marriage of the last 19 years. Mi mujer es una española de Madrid. La bonita de Letters es que es bilingüe. Letters is a bilingual application. In fact, it's 80 languages at once to invite people into a more deliberate, a more passionate, and a more lasting communication. That business and that idea has, in fact, been, in the beginning, an extremely lonely journey. Every entrepreneur here knows that when you build something new, you're, in fact, going to be alone for a while because people are going to think you're either nuts or you've lost it or you're having a middle-age crisis. That was my case, by the way. But in fact, when I unearthed these letters from 1994 and I started to circulate them on my fridge at home with my 3 children starting to observe, we realized that letter writing was not dead. Letter writing simply had not yet been brought to the millennial generation. I frankly am sickened by the number of apps out there that are really, to me, frat apps. They invite anonymous messaging. They invite messaging that disappears. And where would this institution be if we had treated words with such dismissive ideology, such disdain? Words are, in fact, the most profound invention of human beings in terms of how we communicate and how we connect with other people. So my company, I'm proud to say, has raised $2.3 million to create a technology network and a platform which does three very simple things. First, it takes you into the device of choice where people are. And I put a West Point type rule when we launched the company, and that was you could not write a fast letter. The app would stop you. You cannot publish a letter quickly. You cannot deliver a private letter quickly. You were asked and invited into a more deliberate mobile communication. What happened from that point on shocked me. We were downloaded in 170 different countries. 5 NBA players joined our network. The author Paulo Coelho of The Alchemist joined our network. Actress Isabella Mico. And the irony is, as a technologist, I did all of my study and research for timeless communication right across this screen at the Smithsonian Museum, at the U.S. Postal Museum. And I spent time asking curators of the museum, what was the ingredient of the personal letter that was timeless? Not one of them said that it was because it was on paper. Not one of them. Paper and postal delivery was simply the medium of choice. It's what we relied on for personal correspondence. It's much the way picture taking is no longer defined by the darkroom and 35mm cameras, but picture taking is defined for the mass part of the world right here. And so thanks to the U.S. Postal Museum, we really studied what are the three elements of this technology that can be resurrected for a mobile world, where all of the House members here, for example, could not only publish letters, sign those letters. You, by the gift of us today, you have a stamp rep for each of one of you that's on the network today. And the aspiration of a letter is that it's something people want to read. The affirmation of a letter, it's something you're willing to sign. And every letter on our network is signed with a stylus or write with someone's finger. And I'm proud to say over half of our investment has come through other Academy graduates and veterans who saw this as a meaningful company. I'm delighted to say that our creative and coding staff is located in Brooklyn, New York. It's a hub of creative people who care about reviving a national pastime for words that last. And joining me today as well is an Air Force Academy graduate, Andrew Comendo, who was also funded by many Academy graduates and started an augmented reality company. So thank you for recognizing entrepreneurship. And on behalf of Mr. Ostrich, Mr. Zites, and Ms. Pepper, just great to be here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Pepper, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Good morning. My name is Jen Pepper, and I'm a creative entrepreneur from the North Shore of Massachusetts. And thank you, Chairman Shabbat and Ranking Member Velasquez, and all the members of the committee for the opportunity to share my story with you today. I opened my first Etsy shop, Pepper Sprouts, in 2008, where I make nature-inspired home decor. Etsy is an online marketplace where you can buy handmade and vintage goods from artists, designers, and collectors all around the world. When I opened my first shop, I was working full-time as a graphic designer in New York City, and Pepper Sprouts was just a creative outlet for me. I sold some illustrations and a few greeting cards, but I never considered it a business. A few months in, I received an offer to try laser cutting for the first time. So I illustrated a design for a set of coasters and had them laser cut. I posted a photo of the coasters online, and I started getting encouraging responses from friends, some strangers, and a few blogs. So with that encouragement, I started trying to sell them on Etsy. Pepper Sprouts kind of took off. My coasters have been featured in national magazines, sold in museum gift shops, and most importantly, treasured by people all across the world. And then in 2010, I opened another Etsy shop called The Chatty Press, where I sell stationery and address stamps for paper letters. I ran this shop in addition to working as a full-time graphic designer and running my original shop as well. And it grew slowly and steadily. And after another successful holiday season, in 2012, my fiance at the time and I agreed that I would quit my day job. This spring will mark my 4th year as a full-time creative business owner, a milestone I'm incredibly proud of. But my experience is not unique. There are over 1.5 million sellers on Etsy. Together, we sold $1.93 billion in goods in 2014. Most of the sellers there are underrepresented populations. 86% of all Etsy sellers are women. We are twice as likely than other small business owners to be under the age of 35, and many sellers are parents with children at home. For many, Etsy acts as a starting point to creative entrepreneurship because it eliminates the barriers and risks to starting a business. It costs 20 cents to list one item on Etsy, and the platform takes just 3.5% of the transaction. So it's not surprising that nearly half of all Etsy sellers sold their first product on Etsy, just like me. Some people may think that Etsy sellers are hobbyists, but we are small business owners in our own right. In fact, 76% of all sellers on Etsy label their shops as businesses. And for 30% of those sellers, it is our sole occupation. For the rest, it provides an important source of supplemental income. Every part of my business stems from my heart and my own hands, and like the majority of Etsy sellers, I run all aspects of my shop by myself from my home. I write my own copy, I photograph my own products, I draw my designs, I stain and sand every set of coasters that goes through my house, and I typeset every address stamp that's sold in my shop. While operating as a business of one has been really liberating, it does come with challenges that policymakers could help address. First, I am concerned with the Remote Transactions Parity Act, H.R. 2775, which would require sellers like me who sell online to collect and remit sales tax in every state regardless of how big we are. There are over 9,000 tax jurisdictions in the United States, and it would be impossible for me to manage these new requirements without hiring additional help. H.R. 2775 would increase barriers to entrepreneurship and stifle creative micro-businesses, owners like me, who do not have the time or resources to comply with this act. Second, policymakers could help by reducing the barriers we face when shipping goods across borders. Around 15% of my sales are to people in the UK, Australia, and Canada, and while I love seeing my work in homes across the world, it can be a frustrating process to ship them there. Custom duties requirements vary by country, and tracking often stops at the border on packages. I do have to work harder than other large businesses, which have the means to navigate these complex shipping challenges and trade rules. And policymakers can help creative micro-entrepreneurs like me by prioritizing higher de minimis customs exemptions in trade negotiations around the world. I'm thankful for the provisions in the customs bill, increasing the U.S. de minimis to $800, and encouraging USTR to prioritize this issue in future trade negotiations. I encourage lawmakers to quickly pass this important piece of legislation. Finally, policymakers can help build new systems to ensure economic security for self-employed people like me. As a business of one, it can be incredibly difficult to manage periods of slow sales, save for retirement, or even take a sick day. When you're business of one, there are no coworkers filling in when you're sick. Time away from my studio means money lost and increased stress upon my return. More people are earning income outside the employer-employee relationship and working in the broader gig economy, and I encourage policymakers to consider new portable benefit models that ensure everyone has access to economic security, regardless of the way they earn a living. I'm deeply appreciative of the opportunity to share my story with you, and I hope that I've shed some light on the challenges creative entrepreneurs face today. I hope this coming year brings more success, more customers so that I can hire an employee and perhaps even move into my own studio space. My dream is not only to sell my own work, but also create a lasting business that is bigger than just myself. And I welcome the opportunity to work with all of you to make that dream a reality.
Thank you very much. We thank the entire panel. It was a very good testimony, really. And I'll recognize myself for 5 minutes now to ask questions. And I'll start with you, Mr. Dosich. It's my responsibility to be kind of the timekeeper here, so I apologize for cutting you off. But so I'll start with my first. Let me give you a minute or so. Is there anything that you would like to have said that you kind of ran out of time there at the end? So I won't ask you a specific question.
No, I mean I got everything in that I've written, so I'm happy to field questions.
Okay, all right, thank you. Well, let me ask you. You mentioned the Ohio Third Frontier program, and could you maybe elaborate a little bit on that and how that happens, how it works in our state for
Sure.
small businesses and entrepreneurs?
Certainly. So I can tell you how I've seen it impact me personally. I was introduced to the Third Frontier through the Cincy Tech initiative. So they deployed capital through regions in the state by focusing on regional networks. So Cincinnati has an entity, Cincy Tech. Tech Columbus is the entity in Columbus that invests in companies. Cleveland has Jumpstart. So every major city that applied for this kind of capital, it was sort of an ask. And then the Third Frontier said, hey, if in your region, if you can assemble a team of people to build this and then go raise funds to match what we're willing to give you. So it was a matching program, dollar for dollar. We would start pushing venture money into the region. It started as a nonprofit, and they quickly realized for investors to participate, as I mentioned, was important in that equation, that it needed to have a for-profit entity as well. So my experience with the Third Frontier has been working directly in Cincy Tech. They've invested between $500,000 and $800,000 in every company that I've started.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Mr. Zites, I'll go to you next. What were some of the challenges, things that made things tougher to be successful from the federal government? I know there are things that the local folks, but we tend to be, I think, make it a lot tougher, whether it's regulations or whatever. What do we do that makes your life more difficult trying to be an entrepreneur and hire folks and be successful?
There's a lot of regulation. I mean, one that recently impacted us and our clients was the Operation Choke Point that was implemented. It's since been supposedly curtailed and reversed, but the effect of it was to force us to stop payment processing for hundreds and across the country thousands, tens of thousands of small businesses because of
Would you just briefly tell us again what Operation Choke Point was?
So Operation Choke Point was implemented to basically curtail the banking and payment processing for access to banking and payment processing for the business community. So if the government didn't like a particular industry, even though it was completely legal, they would influence or prohibit the banks from allowing them to have bank accounts or payment processing to accept credit cards for payment. Effectively, the reason they call it choke point is you basically choke them off. If you can't accept credit cards for payment, it's going to be a big deterrent to your business. And
wasn't the firearms industry one of those, for example?
Absolutely.
One that was kind of frowned upon by an administration at that time, is my recollection. Yeah. All right.
That's exactly it. I mean, basically, the administration tried to implement social policy through Operation Choke Point.
Thank you. Let me try. I've only got a minute and 13 seconds yet, and I got two more I'd like to get to. Mr. Burkowitz, let me go to you next. What is it about veterans? Why do they make such strong entrepreneurs oftentimes like yourself?
Ambiguity and uncertain outcomes is what you kind of adapt to in the military. So when you start a new business, there's no shortage of ambiguity, and there's certainly no shortage of uncertain outcomes. So I think your ability to adapt to a changing environment, your ability to have stamina and perseverance in terms of what you're doing are just two ingredients. The degree, I think the federal government could recognize that, is do exactly what you're doing today. Just recognize it, and it'll happen.
Thank you. Thank you for being brief on that, too, because then I can get to Ms. Pepper, and I'll be real brief on the question. Does intellectual property rights and making sure that they're enforced, et cetera, is that important to your business? Does that come into play at all?
Absolutely. It would be great to have more of that infrastructure for outside countries as well. For me personally, I've had my work infringed upon by outside countries offering my designs using my own photos that I personally took and selling them for pennies on the dollar. And again, I am just a business of one, so tracking those people down and sending DMCAs to the sites is a lot to manage for one person.
Good. Thank you very much. My time's expired. I'll now yield to the gentlelady from New York.
Thank you. I was very happy to hear, Mr. Dosich, that you mentioned the important role that government could play in providing access to capital or establishing contracting goals so that businesses could access the federal marketplace or the state government procurement processes, because that is a good way for a startup to get contracts. Do you think that it made a difference to have that type of role play by government?
I do. In fact, both.
The mic.
I do. I clearly haven't figured this out. Both from the viewpoint of doing business with these entities.
Sure.
I'm in every one of my companies. I could argue that the state or local government or the federal government could be a customer. But at the same time, I'd love to see more opportunities for, in many cases, big businesses to actually be incentivized by government to do business with small businesses. And that's one of the ways we get started. As a company that's less than a year old, it's all about whose logos you put up on your site in the first 12 months of your existence. And for us to have some incentive for big businesses to do business with us would be hugely helpful.
Sure. We have contracting goals throughout the federal government. So if there is a prime contractor that has the opportunity to do business with the federal government, we require for them to also subcontract with small businesses. So that is a way we incentivize the big, large businesses. They come in, they do business with the federal government, and then we'll provide an opportunity to contract with smaller businesses. Mr. Zites, you mentioned that it is important that we provide opportunities for everyone. And you also you mentor young entrepreneurs, right, and startups. What would you say is the biggest challenge that they are facing today in order to go ahead and settle and open their businesses, but also grow their businesses?
At a high level, it's twofold. It's one, access to capital, and two, it's experience. And experience, you always hear about entrepreneurs failing multiple times before they hit it big. Well, the reason for that is they're gaining experience. They're learning from their failures. But through mentorship, through programs that are out there, whether it's YPO, EO, incubators, et cetera, and even the universities have started to jump on board. This education will provide them the experience necessary so they don't necessarily make those pitfalls.
And what would you say is the biggest hurdle for young graduates to venture out and establish their businesses?
They need access to the capital, but it's knowing that they can take that chance. It's when you're growing up, kids think they can do anything, and in school and society, we kind of box them in. We need to stop boxing people in and letting them believe that they can do anything. And when they go out there, they'll take those chances, they'll take those risks, and many times they'll create just unbelievable things that'll propel our society.
And do you think that the amount of student debt is in a way a challenge for those graduates?
Well, I mean, my wife and I both graduated law school. We met in law school, and when we graduated, we joked that it would have been a huge head start if we had nothing, because we had nearly $300,000 of debt. But we worked hard and paid it back, and I was thankful for the access to it that allowed me to have an education.
So you mentioned that access to capital is very important, and that we need to incentivize banks to lend more. And you say that community banks are the one lending to small businesses in our communities.
I didn't say that they are. I think they need to.
Well, when we compare with big banks, community banks are the ones that are lending to small businesses. And in the federal government, we incentivize community banks and other lenders to lend to small businesses by guaranteeing 85% of their loan. So I don't know if you are aware or any of you have benefited in any way with any of the programs that are in place through the Small Business Administration.
Generally, these times expire, but if you'd like to answer the question, go ahead.
Yeah, I think the programs in place are very helpful, but I think we could go a lot farther with those programs by incenting, especially community banks who are on the front lines. They know they know what that community needs, and they know the character of that entrepreneur, and they're in the best position to make that call it a bet, on whether they're going to be successful. And if the government backstops it with some sort of program where they can charge a premium to offset those losses, I think you'll see a lot more entrepreneurism in this country.
We guarantee 85%. That's a big chunk.
Thank you. The gentleman from Nevada, Mr. Hardy, who is the chairman of the Subcommittee on Investigations, Oversight, and Regulations, recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here. As an entrepreneurial small business owner myself in the past, I appreciate the risk that you take. It is a risk, and every business that starts up takes that risk. It's truly what it means to be an entrepreneur. Putting everything aside, you move forward and you kind of try to figure out whether you can create a better mousetrap. So I guess when you jump in, you either sink or you swim. Those that create that better mousetrap have success, as you folks have had. Those that don't have to kind of go back to the drawing board. Being that small business owner myself and stepping out and taking that chance, I want to give about 20 seconds to each of you, if you would, or to just tell me what you think caused you to take a step forward and take that challenge, because it's not easy, at least in my opinion, but for some reason you push yourself to do it. What caused each of you to do that? If you wouldn't mind, I'll start with you, Mr. Ostrich.
I'd say that for me, it was a relentless commitment to this, my own pain. I think entrepreneurs are born out of either education or of pain. And for me, it was a personal pain point that I was just relentlessly focused on making sure I solved for this. And I think that gave me the confidence to just take the leap.
I have a friend that says he's socially and economically unemployable, so I would say that probably applies to me as well. But it's really passion and purpose. I had a purpose to go out there and be an entrepreneur and help other small businesses. We feel at our company that we champion the small business community, and what we do is we solve their problems, and along the way we profit from that.
In my case, certainly trust your instincts. And, part of the challenge young people have in starting a new business and starting a company is they haven't really fully developed confidence in those instincts. By the time that you've either previously failed or you felt the pain of working perhaps in another organization that didn't fit for you, either the pain or the trust in your instincts just pushes you to do it. And the more philosophical answer is that I always believe what's most personal can also be the most universal. And therefore, if there's something that's so personal to you that you can't see a world without it, you're just going to go do it.
For me, it was I didn't have a choice. I had laid plans in the middle of 2012, after I was married, to go full-time and quit my day job. And before we could get to that point in June, the catalog that I was working for actually shut its doors in March. So I was pushed into, I didn't have a job anymore. So why not just keep working for myself? Because I had already had these companies set up. So I just kept running with it. And here I am. I celebrate 4 years of it this spring.
Thank you. Mr. Burkowitz, I want to start with you first. First of all, you talked about you moved forward and did this as a middle-age crisis. I must tell you, you're wrong. This is a middle-age crisis running from this office. So, with that being said, back to your military background. I had the opportunity to go overseas and visit Israel. And they think some of their best entrepreneurs, and the reason they're such an innovative country is because everybody has to be in the military. They have to grow up quick in Israel, because they enter at 18 and they come out of there 20, 21 years old, and they have done some of the greatest innovations across the country over the past years. Do you see military life or community or service to your nation as an opportunity when you took that opportunity, and thank you for it?
For sure. When I was in Iraq in 1991, the vision of starting my own business was not in my mind. It was establishing the safe haven for the Kurds. And when I play back the word nourishment that came through a letter, it's what I, 20 plus years later, revived. I think there's a lot of support for this nation for veterans, probably better than it ever has been. I think there's a recent decision on Reg A that allows non-investors to get behind a new company and fund that company. And so yeah, I certainly relied on the network of military people who knew me first as a place to start. I'm sure every entrepreneur here went to people who knew them and trusted them. And you just build that incremental trust as you grow your company. And you discover that there's a lot of people in the world who want your services beyond just the military, which was wonderful in itself.
The gentleman's time's expired. Gentlelady from California, Ms. Hahn, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Velasquez, for honoring our entrepreneurs in this country. I'm happy to be a co-sponsor of the resolution declaring it National Entrepreneurs Day, the third, is it the third Thursday or Tuesday? Should be every day. Thank you for your testimony, Ms. Pepper. Really appreciated that. I actually looked up your site while sitting here. You have some really creative, interesting items for sale. I love your woodland ornament advent calendar. Super cute. Anyway,
we may be violating some sort of advertising ethical rules here, but you go right ahead. We want our small businesses to be successful.
Right?
So.
It was super cute.
I'll give you some time at the end to make up for me breaking it.
I'm certainly a strong supporter of women and minority-owned businesses. I've brought to my district in Los Angeles the former SBA administrator and other SBA officials to provide information. We've got seminars just for women-owned and minority-owned businesses. In fact, 1 in 2 new small businesses are Latinas in this country. So, it really is interesting. And 86% of the businesses on Etsy are women-owned. So it certainly is a growing opportunity for women in this country. One of the things that you said in your testimony was that many small business owners lack access to retirement plans. In fact, over 68 million people lack access through their jobs. And I think this is an area where we really need to make sure people have the financial support and freedom and security to feel the confidence to start their own businesses. The Treasury Department started the pilot MyRA program. And under this program, individuals can sign up for retirement accounts that have no fees or cost and no minimum balances. But more importantly, they're backed by our Treasury, and the account stays with you even if you change jobs or decide to open your own business. Have you personally heard of MyRA, and do you think this program helps business owners like yourself, and do you think we should be doing a better job of promoting it?
I have not heard of MyRA, but I mean, it sounds like a great program that could definitely help small businesses, especially small individual businesses. I think a lot of what's missing in retirement plans for single business owners is knowing what plans work best. For me personally, because I am married, I had an individual IRA that no longer worked for me due to the amount of money that my husband was making. I got absolutely no tax credit and no incentivization to have that retirement plan. So I had to go to my accountant to find out what worked for me now. And that's information that's not readily available online, which is where most people turn for this kind of information.
So we probably should be doing a better job of promoting those programs to our small businesses. So I like to do a lot of my holiday shopping on Small Business Saturday, the day after Black Friday. And it usually seems like a lot of our emphasis is on the brick and mortar stores on Small Business Saturday. Do you think we should do a better job of promoting online small businesses like yours in these kinds of shop small business campaigns in this country?
It would be silly to say no. Yes, absolutely. I think a lot of it is about going out and shopping local, which I absolutely do, and I'm a big fan of like my local boutiques that sometimes carry my work and works of my colleagues as well. But I think anything that, you know, the government can do or even other small businesses can do to help support not just brick and mortar physical locations, but all of the Etsy shops and even small businesses that aren't on Etsy.
Have you ever reached out to our Small Business Administration with suggestions on how they might be more supportive of businesses like yours?
I have not, but I absolutely will in the future.
Great. Well, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Gentlelady's time has expired. The gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Pratt, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Hey, welcome to everybody this morning. Thanks for being with us. I just have a question. Once in a while, politics seeps into the city up here. Have you all ever heard of that? I'll try to bypass that. I'm kind of interested. A lot of your stories were very individual, and the product you developed seemed very individual and particular to you. And so that's amazing. I mean, I applaud that, following your passion and developing a product in that way. But in the back of your mind, I mean, to duck the politics, do you, as a small business person, did you choose that path for a reason? Were there other avenues you probably knew you couldn't pursue? I'm just interested in the mind of entrepreneurs out there. Are there some paths that you can pursue in business in other sectors you just know I can't go down that route? I'm just, if you can all just or friends you have in other sectors, other industries where they're also entrepreneurs. I just am curious to a quick response from each of you on that one.
No.
Good.
It was a very clear path for me. I spent most of my early professional career in finance, and felt like I was dying a slow death. And now being 3 startups in, and I blew the first one up. I didn't share that with everyone, but the first one got shut down.
Right.
This will be the same thing I do over and over and over again. And that's what I love about it.
That's great. And just to be clear, I'm trying to get at policy up here. Is there anything we're doing wrong that's crimping some sectors and keeping you from pursuing some lines where you chose to go into other lines, that kind of a thing?
As for me, as I made in my opening remarks, I always wanted to be an entrepreneur, and that led me to ultimately lead to law school, and I practiced law. I worked at a very large firm, Skadden Arps in New York, and I was doing structured finance. So I was securitizing income streams for others, and I thought to myself, how do I go get one of these for myself? And that's how I discovered the payment processing space. And like any entrepreneur, when you start a business, you start to pivot, and that's how we ended up becoming a financial technology company, and we kind of evolved that way. I would say, sure, there's certain industries where there are huge barriers of entry. I would never have dreamed of starting a defense company. I just wouldn't have those resources, or a pharmaceutical company. But I think what you do as an entrepreneur is you rely on what you know and what your niche is. And most great entrepreneurs came from that background. My daughter started a lacrosse business. Why? She's a very good lacrosse player and saw a need. So that's where I think most people go.
The nature of the question asks kind of why do you do something insane?
Yeah.
Because it feels like an insane process, but you will come across an observation of your society that is not necessarily in the interest or long-term benefit of the next generation. And so as you become a parent, you start to think not about problem solving for what you're doing, but how do you anticipate the problems that are right in front of your kids? And I read a book called The Shallows, which was a bestseller by Nicholas Carr about a few years ago. And Nicholas Carr cautioned us as a society about the narrowing band of attention, literacy, and even emotional care that young people have as they move into a more and more shallow band to multiplication of inputs on a mobile device. So when I read the book, 20 years in technology, I said, if we use technology to invite people to move to the shallows, let's turn it upside down and use the same technology, but now invite them into a more reflective, pensive, and with a sense of permanence by design. And it was that book that pushed me down a path to just go do it and not really worry about the consequences afterwards.
That's great. I was going to ask another round too, but Ms. Pepper, maybe I can ask you and push the second one on you. I didn't want to get to this ahead of time, but sometimes there's a tension between small business and big business. So I kind of asked the first round just to see, are certain avenues closed off to you? Put a little bit more bluntly, are there areas where you just see small businesses are being discriminated against? There's huge roadblocks, not just scale. I get the scale industry kind of thing you can't go down, but are there ways which you just feel small businesses getting the short shrift?
I would say in some aspects, yes. With getting financing, all of the hoops that you have to jump through as a small business, you don't necessarily have people working for you who can manage all these things. You really have to do all of the research on your own, which is the one downfall for a small business versus a larger corporation.
Anyone else good in 7 seconds?
Going back to a large business right now would be the death of me.
I'll close on that one. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Gentleman's time's expired. The gentlelady from North Carolina, Ms. Adams, who is the ranking member of the Investigations, Oversight, and Regulations Subcommittee, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ranking Member Velasquez, for hosting this hearing. I've said many times that small firms are the engines that help drive our economy, and our nation's small business entrepreneurs are in the driving seat. We must continue to support these business owners as they start and expand their companies. It's critical to target areas where small firms have the most potential to create jobs and thrive. Some point to government contracting while others focus on exporting. Ms. Pepper, in your opinion, what area has the highest likelihood to make this possible?
I think one thing that needs to be mentioned about some small businesses and women-owned businesses, especially mine in particular, and the 1.5 million sellers also on Etsy, is that we don't necessarily want to grow to get government contracts or to grow and have 100 people working under us. We have our own measurements of success, and for some of us that might be making enough money to take our kids on a vacation. Some of us might be to quit our day jobs. Some of it might be to gain more wholesale accounts and have our goods sold in shops across the country or across the world. But it doesn't necessarily stack up with what other businesses may consider successful outcomes.
Thank you. Mr. Zites, when compared with federal efforts, do you see any limitations in the types of business assistance services that the private sector, such as incubators or other mentor programs, can provide to small firms, particularly minority-owned firms?
I think it breaks down to access to information. It's experience. So businesses that have access to experienced people, to mentors, people to guide them, have a far greater likelihood for success. Programs even at the youth level, when I mentioned the Young Entrepreneur Academy, what they've done is they've partnered these children up with mentors from the business community who've already been there and done that, and they've provided that access through their experience, so that those kids are successful, and a lot of them have created real companies they're employing people and generating real revenue.
Yeah. Beyond SBA's business assistance services, there are a number of training opportunities and resources available to small businesses, such as community college classes. Mr. Burkowitz, in your opinion, how effective are educational classes at the college level for young entrepreneurs, and is this enough to encourage more young prospective business owners?
I think it's a great question because college and community are two just incredible ecosystems to nurture risk takers and problem solving. I think for the college environment, you have certainly universities that have distinguished themselves by attracting entrepreneurs, both success stories of the students that come out of those schools, and it certainly began out more in the West Coast part of the country. There was a bit of a tech snobbery when I first went out there for capital raising on my company. I can tell you, though, in the New York City area, Austin, Chicago, there now is a lot of energy around community events called meetups. And these meetups are going on in these cities probably every other day on subjects from writing code to gaining capital to web design. And I will say they are largely organized around a lot of new technologies. So I think your influence certainly could be to create your own meetups in your own jurisdictions, invite in entrepreneurs, and let a community college know that these entrepreneurs are going to be coming to your office, to your forum, to talk about entrepreneurship and how they might pursue this themselves.
Great, thank you, and thank you all for your testimony. I yield back, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, gentlelady yields back. The gentleman from California, Mr. Peters, recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks to the Ranking Member Velasquez for holding this hearing on National Entrepreneurs Day and for including me. I'm not typically a member of the committee, but as you heard, I'm allowed to sit in today, and I'm happy to do so. And it was an honor to work with the members of the committee to help introduce bipartisan legislation that would support designating the third Tuesday of November as National Entrepreneurs Day. And I want to thank the witnesses for being here to highlight the culture of entrepreneurism that spurred America's growth and for sharing your experiences. I'm proud to represent San Diego, California, which was recognized by Forbes last year as the #1 place to launch a startup. And it's clear to see how much our region has embraced the entrepreneurial spirit that continues to grow in San Diego. And I just want to mention that the reason I was involved last term was I was inspired by a leader in San Diego's research committee whose name was Dwayne Roth, who passed away from injuries sustained in a bicycling accident. So this particular effort has become of some importance to the entire city. His commitment to promoting entrepreneurial spirit helped turn San Diego into a top city for innovation. I had wanted to ask a question of Ms. Pepper about one thing that she mentioned, which was, I think it's now called the Remote Transactions Parity Act. It's my understanding that the various discussions of that kind of approach, which is to require online businesses to collect sales tax so that you're not undercutting brick and mortar stores that are selling the same things. That there's typically a discussion about an exemption for smaller businesses, and I've heard the range of that to be $5 or $10 million of annual revenue. Is that the kind of exemption that would help you in terms of implementing this?
I think a $10 million exemption would be absolutely the right thing to do.
Okay. So you'd favor that level?
Yes.
Okay. Well, that's very helpful for us. I hope that we'll be taking that up, and I think you can see at the very large level that there is a disparity between folks who are selling these big ticket items and then being undercut by online purchases.
Absolutely.
Also, I just wanted to mention, for the benefit of the chairman, we've introduced a bill to cut red tapes to allow startups or businesses with less than $1 million in revenue to file their federal taxes annually instead of every quarter. Maybe this is typically a Ways and Means thing, but something that I think that this committee might be interested in.
Sounds like an excellent idea to me, and I'd be happy to work with the gentleman on that.
Great, thank you. And then finally, although you mentioned you weren't interested in federal contracting, I am a member of the Armed Services Committee. We introduced rules there to allow small businesses to be eligible to compete for some of that business. And we think that that's a successful model for throughout the federal government. And again, Mr. Chairman, I'd love to show you what our ideas were on the defense side and maybe make that something that's available throughout the federal government.
Yeah, we'd be happy to work with the gentleman on that too. Thank you.
Thanks very much. I want to just say again, thanks very much. We wish you the best of luck. And we have another NYU law graduate I saw there too. There's 3 of us in Congress, and we know it's expensive. So I'm glad you were able to pay back those loans.
Thank you.
Good luck. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. The gentleman yields back. The gentlelady from Michigan, Ms. Lawrence, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's great to be with you today as we recognize the National Entrepreneurs Day here in the United States. Ms. Pepper, congratulations on your success. I want you to know between 1997 and 2015, the number of women-owned small businesses have grew over 70%. And that rate is 1.5 times the national average. So congratulations on contributing to that. In my hometown of Detroit, a very small but effective nonprofit called the Build Institute is helping promote entrepreneurship. And since it was founded and have graduated over 600 students, 70% of those students are women, and 60% of them identify with a minority group. So we know that the growth of our economy in the United States is really right now resting on the shoulders of women, and we're very excited about that. So with that, based on your experience of starting and running a successful small business, what advice would you give to women across America who want to start and run their own business, and how can we, Congress, help you?
I think the advice is not to be scared. And there's so much support out there, even in the local level. There's SCORE that you can go to in so many cities that will help not only women, but any small business navigate the tax law and what all of the paperwork that a person would need in their individual location to start a business. And it ranges so much. I mean, I personally just moved to a small town from another small town in Massachusetts, and just to get my little business license for the town, it was about a 10-page book, where the last town that I lived into, it was just a piece of paper that I filed and signed. But I think anything the government can do to just make it easier, and that being self-employed is an opportunity. It is work, but it's so rewarding, and just knowing that everything that you make and do and all of the money you bring in is because of you and your mind and everything that you created.
Thank you so much. I just want to say this, as we talk about understanding in this committee under the leadership of our ranking member and our chair, focus on the challenges of small business. It is extremely important that the feedback and your experience, that we understand it, we incorporate that into our policy so that we can do exactly what you mentioned, and that is to make the road to entrepreneurship and the road of small businesses to be one that is productive, one that sometimes people say government get in the way. I'm a firm believer we shouldn't be in the way. We should be empowering you and giving you the resources so that you can do what you do. And thank you all so much.
Thank
I
you very
yield
much.
back.
Thank you very much. Gentlelady yields
Chairman.
back. Thank you.
Chairman.
And I'd now like to, I'm sorry.
I'm just going to add one comment to the nature of the question. I apologize for that interruption.
go ahead.
There's definitely something to be said too about the co-founders of companies who bring a balance, and there's no doubt in our case, the co-founder of our company, Araceli Blasco, my wife, has brought a certain grace, composure, and style to how we've grown our company that myself as an aerospace engineer would not have brought. And so when people see the visual beauty of letters, the fact that no letters ever look the same, whether you view them on the web or the mobile device, the currency of our company is to certainly bring letters to the world. We will sell mobile stamps, and back to the other question, we would love to not have stamps be taxed. You cannot buy a mobile stamp in any retailer, so it would be nonsensical. But even though the currency of the company is to grow and make money, it was decided by my wife early on that 2% of our company would be owned and allocated to 501(c) called the Letters Foundation, which is allocated to purely let any cause, educational, or nonprofit organization use this technology in perpetuity for free. So it was through kind of the grace of a co-founder to think that way, and I'm delighted that my wife's really the soul of our company.
Thank you
I
very much.
always like to remind people that women are 51% of the population, so it's great that you have targeted that other half of the population. Thank you.
Thank you. Gentlelady's time has expired. The gentlelady from New York, Ms. Meng, who is the ranking member of the Agriculture, Energy, and Trade Subcommittee, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to our ranking member for holding this committee. And just really want to thank you and congratulate all of our entrepreneurs for being here and all that you've achieved. I just wanted to further get a sense of what your experiences have been like with federal agencies' initiatives in terms of what do you think we can do more effectively to get out the message. I know that, for example, in my home district of Queens, New York, a lot of our businesses are sort of the brick and mortar shops, and online resources don't necessarily help. But then when we've talked to a lot of MWBEs, for example, and in New York, they complain of lack of consolidation amongst the city, state, and federal levels in terms of paper handouts. So just wanted to get your take on what do you think can be done more effectively to get the resources and information out. Anyone is...
Well, at the start, it's less regulation, so making it let business do what they do best. But promoting an environment for people that want to be entrepreneurs, and I think it starts at the lowest levels. I mentioned, educating our children that this is a possibility. When they're young, that they can be an entrepreneur. They talk about wanting to be a doctor, wanting to be a lawyer, wanting to be an engineer. We need to instill with them the belief that they would want to be an entrepreneur. Back in years ago, it was a dirty word. It was like, oh, you couldn't get a job, you became an entrepreneur. Well, that's not the case, and we've got people who have been very successful that you look out as role models, and we want to let them all know. And it's not just we talked about why there's less women. You need to educate them at that same young age and let them be aware that this is a valid option for them. And when you do that, my daughter's a perfect example, then they don't see any limits, and they can go on to be quite successful.
I can jump in. I can give you some experience from the first company that I started. When I did the SBA thing. I went to the SBA office. I sat down with somebody and talked to them about what I was trying to build and where we were and current state of things. And that wasn't an option for us. And I think what the SBA is looking for in terms of grant making or loans or doesn't fit the mold or the model of a high growth, high tech company. However, where there's a huge opportunity, I feel, is that the SBA should be where small businesses go for information. I shouldn't go to Cincy Tech or an investor who points me to the SBA. I should go to the SBA first, and they should push me out to everybody. Even if they can't make me a loan or they can't help my business financially, maybe they can connect me with someone who does.
My just very mechanical view of the SBA was the SBA loan process. That application is really geared towards a very classic physical asset company, inventory, warehouse, factory, cash flow, goods and services. So it's out of date in my view. There's a lot of companies who've created a lot of wealth and new opportunity that don't fit that loan application box, which I think is a little outdated, if I might make a suggestion.
And I know that Mr. Zites, you mentioned children's entrepreneurship success. Are there certain programs or initiatives that you think local or federal government can do better to encourage entrepreneurship or foster necessary business skills among youth? And is there a demand for this even?
Well, my children participated in a program called the Young Entrepreneur Academy. It was started out of in Rochester, New York, and it's about 140 locations right now and growing. And I know they're trying to get the word out, so if anybody's listening, hopefully that's helpful to them. But there's other programs out there that are similar to what they're doing, and there's other universities that are starting to not only develop programs and concentrations in entrepreneurship, but they're giving back to the community and bringing in students. And the earlier we can make them aware of these programs and provide this education. I know at my children's school, I spoke recently with the principal about, she asked me, your kids are doing these wonderful things. How can we do that for all our children? And they're looking heavily into how to create a program for entrepreneurship there. And it's really access. When they know it's an option, then it's something that can be, they can strive for.
Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you. Gentlelady yields back. We want to thank our panel here. I think you've really been excellent here today. And Mr. Zites, you mentioned about when people couldn't get a job and they became entrepreneurs, or was maybe looked down upon back in the past. The kid I really feel sorry for is the poor kid in the GE commercials whose dad thinks he can't pick up the hammer, and whose friends ask him if he works on a train and all that kind of stuff. He's the one that I really I feel very sorry for. GE Aviation happens to be headquartered in my district, but in any event, it's very obvious to me, why each of you has been successful in a tough world out there. You're all very creative and quick on your feet, even though you're sitting down answering all our questions. I think you really did a commendable job here, and I would encourage folks to maybe consider these meetings are. If you go to the House Small Business website, these are all available, and if there are potential entrepreneurs out there all across the country who I think could really learn a lot on what took place here this morning and a little bit into this afternoon, because you all had a lot of very wise things to say, and I think it'd be great for the economy if they listen, because a lot of people probably would be successful. Obviously not everybody, but some might be, and hire a lot of folks and get the economy moving, and that's what both Republicans and Democrats on this committee are all about. Right, Ranking Member?
And let me just thank you for your important experiences that you share with us. And I hope that we could continue doing this at the local level so that other people, because information is so important, at least, and to listen to you so that others do not make maybe the same mistakes that people before them made, or that they gain the type of information that empower them to go to the right places. But one thing is important is that there is a network of support out there. We need to do a better job at communicating that type of information.
Thank you very much. And again, we thank the very distinguished members of the panel for their testimony today. And I would ask unanimous consent that members have 5 legislative days to submit statements and supporting materials for the record. Without objection, so ordered. And if there's no further business to come before the committee, we're adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
You too. Do you have a card?
I do, yeah. Because we could create a stamp and feature